Hey, what's up, mortals? It's Miggy Sawdust here with a new video for you. Welcome to part 17 of What If Izuku Got One for All Early. Just wanted to greet you all by just saying, sit back and relax. You're in for a treat. Let's get it. The trees and the ground surrounding the students decayed faster and faster as Shigaraki approached them. Oh, good, you're all together. Now I don't have to go looking for each of you. The students gazed at the indomitable force before them. Midoriya stepped up from the rest of the group. He gave a determined look on his face, but there was plenty of fear behind that determination. Why so smug, Izuku Midoriya? Wouldn't say I'm smug. What I do know is I'm done with you hurting those I care for. So confident. I guess pride does come before the fall. Well, if you're so confident. Shigaraki touches the communicator he's wearing on his ear. Kirigiri, can you hear me? Yes. Okay. Teleport us then, where we discussed. A massive portal opened, swallowing up the group. The UA students and Tomura warped to Kamino Ward. All that surrounded them were abandoned buildings and rubble. Do you still feel so confident, even when there's civilians and collateral damage to worry about? Shigaraki smiled creepily. He raised his arms as if praising all the work he's done just for this grand moment. Now would be the time to beg for your lives, heroes. Kurigiri, let's move to the next bit of our plan. A portal opened up behind Shigaraki. High-end Nomu crept from beyond the abyss. Do you recognize this place, Izuku Midoriya? Katsuki Bakugo? We are where you killed my master. And now, it's where you'll meet your end. Shigaraki kneeled. His hand placed itself on the ground, and the surrounding buildings started crumbling away. Aizawa and the students readied themselves for the upcoming conflict. Aizawa couldn't react before Midoriya rushed into the herd of malice. His aim was dead set on Shigaraki. He raised his fist, going in for a full frontal smash. I won't let you get away with hurting anyone else! The attack was short-lived. When the dust cloud that Izuku caused dispersed, a Nomu blocked the smash attack with little effort. It did no more than flex its arm, absorbing the shock damage. In the crowd of students, Aizawa reached in for his phone and made a call to an emergency hotline. There's currently an attack in Kamino Ward near the abandoned factories. It's an emergency. The League of Villains are attacking students at the epicenter. Copy that. We'll be sending reinforcements as soon as we can. The Nomu's four different mouths formed simultaneously to a grin. Its forearm thickened with muscles as it absorbed Izuku's attacks. It brought back a mighty swing and returned the force at Izuku. The wind launched him with a shockwave as the Nomu's muscles shrank back to normal. In midair, before Izuku could even make an impact with anything, the Nomu grabbed his face. That's speed! The deformed creature grew a pair of wings with its four arms. They both floated in the air while the tight grip on Izuku's face kept him subdued. Its grip tightened the skin along his face. Izuku hardly struggled. In fact, he was limp. His body pushed to its breaking point a long time ago. Perhaps this was it. As the abyss that dwelled within Izuku's exhausted mind grew more and more potent, a bright light outshined in the darkness. The barrage of attacks blasted the Nomu on both ends with Todoroki's fire and Bakugo's explosions. It was too bright, even for Izuku. He had to shield his eyes as the arm of the Nomu began melting, just enough for Izuku to push the hand off of him before it regenerated again. Get your ass into gear, you damn nerd! The Nomu didn't lose its focus. However, it received direct orders from its master to specifically target the future's pillar. The Nomu didn't lose its focus. However, it received direct orders from its master to specifically target the future's pillar. Izuku's spine tingled, and his face regained its determination. Katsuki's words lit a fire in his belly once again. Izuku redirected himself in midair. half of his body disfigured as Black Whip undid itself and stuck to a building. Izuku landed where the edge of Black Whip attached itself and tore a chunk off the building by jumping off of it. With the building's chunk still attached, Izuku flung it around like a chain weight, slamming it right into the Nomu. Izuku rebonded his body with Black Whip, re-establishing himself before flicking a small but intense airwave at the bits of Nomu. Upon this, the chunks of mutated flesh shot out at the crowd of mutants like bullets. All that was left was a cloud of blood and Swiss cheese Nomus. Some didn't survive the assault, while others were recovering or absorbed the damage. The entire class was more than pumped. The life bled back into their being, almost forgetting about how genuinely devastating the situation was. They all leapt up with a look of victory in their eyes, as the fighting spirit filled their psyche. They charged forward without hesitation. Meanwhile, Izuku's situation contrasted with his classmates. It came off grimmer. Izuku was too busy forcing Black Whip to force his appendages to snap back in the right direction before acting again. The force his fingers had to recoil with the flick from before snapped it out of place once again. I feel like a puppet. I hate this. There was no pain for Izuku, either from damaged nerves or running off of adrenaline. There was no telling which was the greater truth. The only sure thing was that this needed to end, soon. A sharp pain instantly fluttered flatly across his cheek, the pain conjured by Todoroki's hand. Idiot. Are you trying to get yourself killed? You're not All Might. Stop trying to be like him and rely on us more. Izuku rubbed the red mark left behind on his cheek, staring at his classmate, speechless. Todoroki clenched his fist. I went along with your plan back in the forest because I thought you had an idea of how you could utilize us as a team. If I knew you were going to be this dense, I wouldn't have followed you a step further back there. He rotated to the side, presenting how hard everyone was fighting at defeating the Nomus. Izuku was so caught up in his battle he didn't even realize. This is what your classmates, no, your friends are capable of, Izuku. We're here for you just as much as you're here for us. I know you may be hurting right now, but that's because ever since the villain showed up, you've been acting on your own, not asking for help in the slightest. Now look at you. Looks like your quirk had to evolve to force your body into a fighting condition. I'd bet you crumple to the ground without it right now. Todoroki gasped and jumped a bit when he felt Bakugo's hand grasp his shoulder. That's enough, man. I'll take it from here. Help the others. Todoroki took a breather before nodding and headed off to the war zone. Katsuki crouched next to his battered up childhood friend. You're one damn crazy nerd, you know that? Izuku sat in silence, just waiting to hear what lecture Bakugo possibly had for him. It was rare for him to lecture people without raising his voice or throwing his fists around. Back when I joined the League for that short amount of time, I learned quite a few things about myself. Mainly the ugliness inside of me. I felt at home when I was with them, even though I couldn't exactly trust them. That's the thing. The fact that I felt at home over there made me realize just how far from the hero world I was. I feel like I see that in you right now, Deku. No. Izuku. I know your inner repulsiveness, so trust me when I say that you need to relax and think about what a hero means. To me, it used to mean being the strongest out there. Though with power comes a great amount of duty and ownership. You were All Might's student. What would he say if he saw you like this? Izuku looked down. He already knew all too well what All Might would say. If only I were still alive. You wouldn't have to suffer like this. That's not what the young pillar wanted to hear from his predecessor. Izuku only wanted to prove that he could tackle the mantle on his own. That it only brought him to where he was now, just a shell of the aspirations he once had. Bakugo faced All Might's poser. So, you think you can equal up to the experience and power he had? Sure, you may be a badass, but I don't think you're on All Might's level. All Might would have already wiped the floor with these guys back in his prime. And you're not in your prime yet, nerd. And it would be a damn shame to watch you die here before you got to do any actual saving. So stand up, you nerd. I'm sick of looking at you from your shadow as you walk further away from your goals. If you won't start acting like a hero, start acting like a teammate. And most importantly, start acting like a friend. Then you're the one who's going to have to get sick of watching from my shadow, because I'll be doing all that for you. If I see you taking on all your burdens again, then I'll have to beat some sense into you. Damn nerd, stand up and be a hero already! Bakugo blasted off into the battlefield. He dive bombed into the crowd with a massive explosion. The wind from the explosion waved against Izuku's hair before he leaned back against the wall, staring into space. You have some cool friends, you know that? Izuku gazed at the figure, unsure of who she was. Who are you? She smiled softly, crossing her arms. Let's just say I'm a friend of a friend. You can call me Nana. The acid ate away at the skin of some Nomu, the handiwork of Mina Ashido, and a giant hand smashes into another, throwing them back a bit. The three high-ends that finish at this point step out, and one goes straight for the students, the other two staying by Shigaraki's side as he watches, keeping a lookout for Izuku. Todoroki froze over one of the Nomu, and turned to see the two high-ends. He stepped forward as a slippery layer of ice glazed across the ground. Once the ice made contact with the high-ends, it climbed up their legs, encapsulating their bodies. That should hold them. That should keep them at bay for a bit. The ice solidifies and dehydrates around their bodies, forming into dry ice. They crack into chunks before falling to the ground. However, those chunks begin to liquefy and reconnect themselves, leaving behind only hollowed ice and full Nomus. Todoroki watched as they did so, genuinely annoyed by this predicament. Damn it! That wasn't enough time at all. Todoroki approached them. However, one of them vanished from sight before the high-tier mutant shot at the student. Aizawa leapt in at the last possible moment, taking in the attack for Shoto. Aizawa landed on the ground with a resounding thump. The immense and indomitable bioengineered humans went in Aizawa's face, breaking his goggles and threw him into a wall. Shinso and Bakugo noticed this. Sensei! Bakugo jumped in, landing blows on the thick-skinned brain, lit with an explosion and knocking it away. Ochako just finished dropping Nomu from great heights by holding her quirk. When she recovered herself from the vomiting, she gazed up at Shoto. Todoroki, look out! Todoroki maneuvered out of the way, and a Nomu fell on top of another one of its kin that was about to attack him. In the distance, Shigaraki smiled as the students slowly but surely were forced to retreat from the overwhelming number of opponents. I think it's time to get started. Finally. Shigaraki started moving out to prepare his attack. However, Kosei used his solid air and trapped Shigaraki in a solid, invisible box. Katsutetsu and Kendo managed to beat a Nomu, and threw it while Tokoyami and Tsuyu managed to take another one down. After some time, Shigaraki noticed that the numbers were dwindling. He stood patiently inside his invisible isolation, with little to no stress on his face, which worried Kosei. He's probably up to something. Kurogiri, send in the rest. Like a sunset, the light that once flooded the atmosphere dwindled by every creeping second. The portal that appeared was more sizable than the last. Kurogiri comes out of the portal as well. The doctor says that those are the last of the Nomu. Do you want to retreat and leave them to fight? No, that would be a waste. How about you free me from this prison and we join the fun? Very well, then. But what prison are you referring to? One of those brats used his quirk on me and made some sort of air prison. I can't seem to decay it. Kurogiri merely summoned a portal from underneath his master. It sucked him up, and he popped out from the portal that the Nomu emitted from. His smile took on a wicked demeanor. He never felt more in control of the situation. Back in the decrepit building that Izuku found solace within, his refuge was rearing him away from the dangers, if only for enough time to lick his more immediate wounds. His eyes fluttered shut and opened once again, struggling to stay awake. Before he could drift off into his dreamscape, Nana grabbed his chin and slapped him playfully. Hey kid, you gotta stay with me. I know your body's going through a lot right now, but we need to talk before I let you go. Izuku did little more than nod. His dislocated jaw made the pain too difficult to move his facial muscles. Nana knelt in front of the broken boy. Midoriya, you've been by far the hardest working pillar of the rest of us. I've never seen such an aspiration to push so hard for the ones you love. Now that you're resting, I see now you're probably coming down from your adrenaline. So I won't keep you long. You've earned my respect, gratitude, and, most importantly, you've earned your right next to all the predecessors as a pillar. Please accept my quirk. Without a doubt, it will grant you what you need to succeed in the trials ahead of you. Also, give my grandson a good helping of hero punishment for me. He's done far too much damage than I'd like to admit. She gave a cheerful smile as she slowly removed her glove. Nana slipped it off from her fingers. She reached out towards Izuku's battered torso, caressing it gently before pushing inside of the young man before her. A shimmering light gleamed from the area, and the young boy's eyes had life breathing through his irises once more. When he came to, Ochako was the one crouched before him, with tears swelling up in her eyes. She had a genuine look of worry for him. Perhaps it was Blackwhip from before, but no one could tell what kind of condition he was actually in. Amazingly, he was alive even now. Deku, wake up. She gently grasped his dislocated shoulder, trying not to damage him further while barely shaking him. Izuku utilized Blackwhip to control his other arm, lifting it to gently pat Ochako on the back of her hand. She wielded up some courage to hug him gently, making sure not to injure him further. She leaned him forward to keep his body off the cold, hard concrete wall, and adjusted him on her lap, a much softer surface. She rustled her hand through his hair. Everyone's fighting hard out there, you know? She chuckled as she wiped the stream of tears from her cheek. She held up 3 fingers and smiled, giggling a bit. I got 3 of them earlier. Right now, Bakugo and Todoroki are going berserk on them. It's amusing to watch, though, honestly, I think we're in a losing battle here. She once again jolted her emotions back down into a defeated state, crying once again. I'm scared, Izuku. I'm scared of how we'll turn out. I'll never be able to make enough money for my parents because I'll be gone before then. I'm scared for the rest of us, too. I mean, look at yourself. If it weren't for the awesome quirk you have, you'd be completely immobile or maybe even dead. I can't stand it anymore, Deku. Seeing all of us suffer like this? Seeing you suffer like this? I'm sorry, I don't mean to be annoying. Just thought having someone to vent to could help me cope, even just a little. Izuku lightly smiled as Blackwhip guided his hand to caress her cheek, wiping off the stream of tears once again. It's okay. You don't have to worry anymore. I'll I'll make sure of it. Blackwhip wrapped itself around his entire body once again. His weight shrunk lighter and lighter until nothing was weighing him down, as if his burdens left him as he arose. Thank you, Nana. Ochako. I'll finish this soon. Are you going back out there and be reckless again? Ochako held him by the wrist, refusing to let go of what precious hope she had left. Izuku rotated his head just a little over his shoulder and smiled. She loosened her grip after he gently held her wrist. Izuku loosened his grip from her one more time before he zipped away, leaving behind a subtle shockwave strong enough to cause a strong airflow on a mildly windy night. Ochako held herself stable and adjusted her hair out of her face, clasping her hands together to pray for her cherished friend to come back safe. The soft blows of wind fluttered Shigaraki's wrinkled hoodie. The moon's light shined down on the world that had elapsed in the abyss of the night sky. The outraging battle he held in the palm of his hand conjured blackouts throughout the town. Block by block, the city went completely dark, revealing the stars above. His chapped lips curved into a wicked smile as he gazed up at the moon. He imagined it crumbling beneath his fingertips until there was no more light left in the world. Shigaraki's fantasies were short-lived as per usual. An annoying, glowing green speck discoursed his picture of its perfect world. Here, that speck was right in front of him, standing tall as usual.
My, you just don't know how to die, do you?
Izuku stood before his adversary once more. Shigaraki took a deep breath before removing father from his face. This won't be like last time. Only one of us is walking away from this. Midoriya acknowledged this hard truth, though Izuku wanted nothing more than to bring this guy behind custody, rather than kill another person. He couldn't make any promises for his goal, however. The rest of the students kept themselves busy with the army. It would have been easier to manage if it weren't for the rogue citizens still trying to escape the area. Zero guided them out of harm's way. Up above, a news chopper showed up to broadcast the situation. Bakugo jumped back, evading the attacks of a mid-tier, and noticed Shinso struggling with another.
How you doing, Shinso?
Fine, my quirk isn't very well suited for these guys.
If you feel you can't do much, help Sarah with the evacuation. We can handle this.
Bakugo's gloves shimmered with red-hot light. He smirked.
Finally.
Bakugo then shot a massive explosion. The heat from the blast instantly melted both of the mid-tiers. Manama, amid his battle, noticed Bakugo's explosion and raced towards the light. His quirk would work wonders just about now. He managed to copy Bakugo's quirk and began to take down as many as possible, and switched to Todoroki's quirk to take down the next. From behind him came another one. It used full force and socked Manama over the head. He quickly switched to Kirishima's quirk, but a bit too late. The impact sent him flying through a wall, busting his cranium a bit. Kendo and Tetsutetsu found themselves outnumbered and outperformed by the ensemble of enemies before them. They eventually laid in defeat during the battle. The newscopter began to broadcast the fight. This is Christy Shimomura, with live footage of a battle raging on Kamino Ward. We're unsure of exactly how all this began. What we do know is it seems to be UA students, specifically Class 1A from the sports festival. It's unclear who they're fighting, but it doesn't look right. They're big, ugly, and very strong. Is that. Hey, get a close up on that guy in the hoodie. Is that Tomura Shigaraki? The leader of the League of Villains. This is worse than we thought, folks. It seems one of the students is facing him. Neither of them are moving either. Meanwhile, Tsuyu and Tokoyami were facing off against a bulkier Nomu with hacksaw claws for hands. Tsuyu maneuvered around it with her tongue, leaping from building to building to keep it distracted. She eventually slipped up, and the ravaging mutant's claws sliced Tsuyu's stretched out tongue. Tokoyami, who was fighting alongside Tsuyu, noticed this and caught her as she fell. The remnants of her tongue fell beside both of them. Tokoyami then began to rampage. Dark Shadow lost control again, with ease, and began to take down one Nomu after another, including the Ravager. Since there was a citywide blackout, there was no calming this storm with the city light. Aoyama was cowering behind debris nearby. He gazed at Dark Shadow, which only scared him more, but Tsuyu was lying helpless on the ground. Aoyama began to stand to grab her, but froze solid. His legs shook and turned to jelly. His chattering teeth made it evident that he wasn't cut out for this. Though, to be a hero, one must break past their limits. Dark Shadow was about to stomp down on the helpless, bleeding Tsuyu before Aoyama shined his remarkable naval beam right into the darkness, calming it. The news chopper continued its broadcast. The only way the news report was getting through was through teenagers and adults watching on their phones. The heroes were called, however, none managed to respond yet. One can't help but recall the events that happened here months ago. On the ground, Midori and Shigaraki finally ended their standoff and approached one another. Izuku zoomed past his peripherals, phasing out from his vision, and went for a swift roundhouse from the back. Kurogiri summoned a portal where his foot appeared, and another portal appeared by his head, kicking himself in the face as he spun back off the building and began to fall. A flock of red feathers caught the young boy and raised him back up on the roof. Hawk stood where he dropped the green haired boy off. The helicopter caught wind of this by one of the scouters in the chopper. Hey kid, you alright? Izuku adjusted himself and stood up off the feathers. The bed of feathers realigned themselves back into wings along Hawk's back. Izuku gazed behind him at the number 4 hero and smiled. For as much as he wanted to, this was no time to fanboy. I'm fine, though I would have been okay if you didn't do that. Thanks, though. Hawks peeked at the kid, and the next thing he knew, the kid was floating off the ground on his own. Izuku winked at Hawks, and the sly, winged hero merely chuckled at the irony. You sure want to tackle this one on your own, huh? You ain't looking so hot, kid. Izuku nodded and kept up his brave smile. Call me Deku. Hawks nodded in kind. He smiled after learning the kid's name. He flew off after speaking. I'll go help the others then. Good luck. Was that? Ladies and gentlemen, it was. You are watching the prodigy of Hero Society, one who has risen to the number 4 spot and is still only 22 years old. Hawks arrived on the scene. On the ground, many students except Bakugo, Todoroki, and Midori are down for the count. The situation was dangerous as well. Bakugo and Todoroki kept going around and gathering up their fellow students, evacuating them nearby in a pile to watch over them. Both of them were severely outnumbered, and saying their quirks are overused would be an understatement. That's when Mirio leaped out from underneath the ground, finessing through multiple Nomu. Power! Night-Eye joined in as well. He easily evaded blows from Nomu, and he pummeled them with ease using support items and foresight. Gran Torino made his entrance as well, leaping back and forth between the bioengineered monsters like a ricocheting bullet. Heroes began arriving on the scene, including Best Genus, Headshot, Kamui Woods, Mount Lady, and others. Bakugo and Todoroki finally had some breathing room, now that most of the herd had focused their assault on the entourage of heroes. Shigaraki turned his head away towards the commotion coming from below. He scratched his neck, tearing away strips of skin upon gazing at the new arrivals.
Looks like I gotta cut my fun short, as always.
Shigaraki snapped his fingers and Kurogiri summoned forth the corpse of Higantomakia. He placed all 5 fingers on the corpse, and all for one absorbed his body while simultaneously decaying it to oblivion. All of Higanto's extravagant powers had transferred to the chapped villain.
You did your best, hero.
Thank you all for sticking around, and I hope you enjoyed that. Before you leave, we'd just like to let you know that we the Celestials have many other channels for your entertainment and viewing purposes. All the information you'll need is right below here in the description, so feel free to check out all the other incredible projects our team creates. Secondly, on behalf of We the Celestials, I'd like to thank everyone involved in the production of today's awesome content. Their details will also be in the description below. That's all for today, so goodbye and have a divine day.